Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, good afternoon, and it's so sensitive to talk about the youth. Honestly saying that. I mean, if we will go back, could be 20 years back, the youth in some countries, I will be saying very honest, used to be a troublemaker. Today, the youth, they are future builder. In some countries, 20 years, 30 years back, they used to be in the back. Today, the youth, they are in the front. 20, 30 years back, the youth, in some countries, no one listened to them. Today, youth, they have full attentions, and everybody listen to them. In some countries, the youth, they used to be the follower. Today, they are the leaders. Therefore, when I'm saying this, so sensitive topics to talk about it. And we are proud and thanks to God that we are here in the United Arab Emirates, leading by our President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan and his Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. They are giving full support with all the means, with all the way to our youth. Please, welcome with me in my panel discussions Sheikh Diab bin Khalifa Al Nahyan, one of the great youth examples in the United Arab Emirates. I will give him in a while to introduce himself, but let me also introduce Farah. I think Farah, she explained about herself. So we welcome you here in Dubai, and we are very interested to hear from you from an international experience point of view. And kindly welcome with me Amir, the chairman of Columbia Universities and the founder of WeYakum initiative. And she will also introduce herself in a minute. Sheikh, please allow me in the beginning to start with the ladies, because I would like you to be with me to bid them later on. So let me start. Amira, please allow me to start with a guest. We are in the Arabian hospitality. We have to give a chance to our guest to talk. Ms. Farah, I was about to ask you in the beginning about your journey, but I think you explained to us in your keynotes. I'm not going to go to that to talk about your journey during the politician's work and what exactly you did. But I have a question for you. And that question is, do you think the youth, they are deserved to be listened?
So it's a fun question, but it's an actual real question. And I will say to you, quite honestly, I have never been so moved by an experience as I was when I was traveling around the world talking to this generation, because of three things. The first is, this is a generation that is not waiting, right? They aren't waiting for them to have dark hair, dark hair getting gray and big titles. What they're interested in is my idea rational? Is it reasonable? And can I take it forward? The second is, they're profoundly, as I said in my speech, very profoundly connected to each other. So the idea that there is a hierarchy not only of age is diminished, right? But there's also a hierarchy of what part of the world is diminished. In years past, we used to look at particular parts of the world and think, well, if this is being stated in Europe, it must be the way to go. Or if this is happening in Africa, we're going to wait. Not to be rude about it, but that has been turned on its head.
So you mean we have no choice, only to listen?
No, I say that the power of the future is with them. So you asked, should they be listened to? Well, and then my third point I just want to say is that I believe really importantly that as you see this next change taking place, it's not that every single one of their ideas is profound and amazing, but it has promise. And so when you say to me, should they be listened to? The answer is yes, they should be listened to, because you never know how innovative their idea will be, and we've got to give a chance to what it is that they're saying.
Agreed. Amira, please introduce yourself, and I would like to ask you questions. You create and you found We Are Come initiative, which means with you. We'd like to hear from you, from your experience, your journey, and why, and what's the things that inspire you to do We Are Come initiative.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam.
So I think your childhood plays a very important role in who you become as a We Are Come. You see, growing up in the UAE, I was exposed to over 200 nationalities growing up, and so tolerance and acceptance for all, regardless of race, religion, or nationality, was embedded in me. When I went to school, I now realized that 2 of my classmates had learning disabilities. And I often saw them being bullied. I often saw them lag behind in class, and somehow I saw it upon myself to help them, catch up with class. Again, this was grade 5, so I'm sure you can tell I didn't know really what I was doing or the impact of the work. Until one day in the school playground, the principal came to us, and of course everybody was scared and we thought we did something wrong, until the school principal pinned a big star on my shoulder and explained to me that what I had been doing with those kids was very appreciated, and that their mothers had fought so hard to put them in school so that they don't lag behind. So as a child, at that point, I understood that what I had done was good, that helping people get educated was good, and that was one side. Now, again, going back to my discussion about environment, the other side was, growing up in the UAE and learning from my father firsthand of what Sheikh Zayed, who you guys know as perhaps the president of the UAE, but to us he was a founding father and a father figure, and his wife Sheikh Fatma bint Mubarak. And way back in the day, today we call them educational stipends, but they made sure that both boys and girls went to school and paid the families of those, even girls to ensure that they did go to school, they did receive an education. So it's no secret that today you see myself, and I'm sure a lot of my other female counterparts in the audience that are educated at Harvard, Columbia, at the top schools, and have high positions. So it's not by chance that 44 years after the establishment of the United Arab Emirates that you see this, and you see 95% of female graduates and those that are enrolled in school. So I just wanted to explain to you where I came from and what my mindset was. And so naturally, I'll take a minute longer, but when I was at Columbia in New York, obviously I was with a lot of my colleagues that were very like-minded in terms of thinking about sustainable economic growth and inclusive growth. And I think it was there that the topic of, investing in youth and making changes happen now, it came to mind more than once. And as Farah was speaking earlier, youth don't want to attend all these conferences and policies and discussions. They want things to be done. They want things now, and they want things to be done. So, of course, education is a crucial determinant of a country's capacity for economic growth. And so when I came back after my education, I thought, okay, how can I, as Amira, give back to my UAE? And I believe that every person, every one of us, citizens and residents alike, can do a little something. So I established We Are Come. We Are Come means with you in Arabic, for those of you that are not Arabic speaking. And the mandate or the mission of what we do is we equip Emiratis, UAE nationals who are a minority, to basically realize their educational and professional careers. So helping them get into Ivy League universities, helping them, get jobs that are fitting in basically to the upcoming sectors, and so on and so forth. This is again very important, and I believe that, last but not least, the work that I do is part of a larger ecosystem, right? And if there are no governments that are involved, for instance, with Sheikha Fatma bint Mubarak having, the General Women's Union from way back. Sheikha Manal, bint Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who established a Gender Balance Council, right, to ensure that women have equal opportunities. And as a result, since back in the day, we're one of the only countries in the world that have equal pay for women. So I think that let's clap to that. We're talking about women empowerment, and and today you can see that realized. So we're a government that, we're living in a country where the government actually does. It takes action. And so I simply plugged in to the government offering scholarships for students. Well, they can go. I can help them along the way. If it is women wanting to be empowered in the workplace, they can do that. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid recently established an Institute of Tolerance. So this again goes back to Farah's discussion about building the mindset and having youth that are not idle, that they're working and their mindset is clear so they don't take up risky behavior. So this is, this was a journey. It was, it wasn't an easy one, but a worthwhile one. And this is what I wanted to share with you.
Is it a personal initiative?
It is. I found it.
Self-funded?
It is self-funded. So before any of you think that I got any kind of support, what I did is, I decided to start on my own. And I decided to use my own money. And so what I would do, coming back, from the States, I got a job, obviously. And from my salary, I used to take a percentage and fund Wiyakum. So, thank you. So I want to say that, nothing should hinder any of us to give back to the country and to do. And it doesn't mean if you're a millionaire that you can, and that if you don't have that much funding that you can't, or vice versa. There's no excuse. When I look on my right and I see my leaders, they're people at the end of the day, working day and night. I sometimes can't catch up with, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, our foreign minister, around the world. I can't catch up with any of my leaders. And so, of course, I'm inspired by what I see in the UAE today to, play my part.
Thank you very much. I'm really proud that you are doing this in personal initiative, self-funding. I really appreciate it. Sheikh, the floor is for you.
Thank
Would
you.
like to hear from you.
Thank you.
All your journey.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Diab Khalifa. It all started when I was back in school. I was 16 years old doing my GCSEs at the British school. That's when I started researching, asking around, visiting different military academies. That's when I knew I wanted to join the forces. We're very fortunate living here in the UAE. And I think we take a lot of things for granted. But what we need to know is that our options aren't going to come to us. We've got to stand up and do the work and choose what we're going to be doing. Back then, I completed my studies, came back, and that's when I joined the forces. The plan was already put in place. The plan to turn soldiers into climbers. The plan for a team to represent the UAE and the UAE Armed Forces to summit Everest on the anniversary of the unification of the UAE's Armed Forces. I was lucky to be part of that team. One thing I'd like to talk about from our experiences in the team. Before joining, we went through a selection process. I'm sure most of you here are familiar with some sort of selection process you went through in the past, whether it's applying for a job, getting into university, whatever it is. Our selection process was slightly different. I'm going to get to my point. I'm just going to talk about this slightly. It was open to anyone in the UAE Armed Forces, soldiers and officers. Hundreds of people applied. 77 got picked, and 16 made the team. It started with interviews. It wasn't just something you show up at and join the team. Interviews I had to prepare for. I had to do my research. I had to ask around. I had to think of the questions I might be asked. Once that was done, it was fitness tests. I was never as fit. It was something I had to work on before applying, and medical tests, where that was either yes or a no. After that, it was based on skills, physical fitness, and mental toughness. I wasn't born with climbing skills. It was something I had to work on. Physical fitness, it was constant competition between us and the team to make the cut. And mental toughness was something we had to develop throughout training. My point is, it's not always the ones with high potential that made the cut. You can be the smartest one in class or at work. You can be the most talented. But it's the effort you put in. The guys with high potential, when they were pushing 60 to 70%, we who stayed in the team were willing to work harder to stay in the team. Because it's not an excuse to say, I haven't got the potential, or I haven't got the talent, or I'm not smart enough. Because effort beats talent and beats potential. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I would like to ask other questions. I'm sure you are with so many of the United Arab Emirates youth, you are interacting with them, you are in touch with them. Do you think, and honestly, in your humble opinion, do you think our youth from United Arab Emirates, they are so matured? Honestly.
Sorry?
Matured?
Definitely. I just recently went back to the school I used to go to as a kid. I saw the students, the ones I was in their place 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It's a different environment, it's a different way of thinking. Even the questions they've been asking is much different than how we used to think when we were in their place. As mentioned before us, the thinking process is different nowadays.
So they are so matured, and they really deserve that our government, they are listening to them and giving all them power.
Definitely, I think there's a lot of potential to make use of.
Thank you. Farah, questions? How we could, I need to talk from the government point of view, because you've been served in the government as a politicians. How we could control the ambitions of the youth. Youth, they want everything. They need everything. Amira, she said they want to have it, action, done. But there's a limit from the government point of view. How we could control it? Or we should just leave them and listen to them all the way?
So I think it...
From your experience.
No, but I think it's an important question. Look, you can't know what they're going to say or what their ideas are or how they view things differently. I think both of the panelists on both sides of me have told extraordinary stories about their own motivation, their own insights, their own experience on how it plays out. If you approach something and suggest that young people need to be in this particular box and can only stay in that box, you're never going to get good ideas. You have to build a system in which you can get a whole host of new ideas and handpick the things that you think as government you can do. It's not to say what you're containing, it's to how you apply their innovation to the things that you want to do. In some cases, government will take an idea in a particular direction with those young people. In others, the young person would say, you know what, it's not going to fit in this capacity and I'm going to do it on my own. There's a balancing act. But I will say, one of the things that has been most profound is that the exploration of ideas is the thing I really want to hit home on. I think it's a very scary thing for governments to look at and to think, my goodness, if you open up Pandora's box, you can get a whole host of things we aren't ready to do. Every country is different. In the United States, our environment is a little bit different than it is here, and so the way in which we think about young people, our DNA, if you wish, is very different. We really amplify untraditional sources, and that's how we get some of the innovation in the technology field or in the medicine field or whatever it happens to be. But one of the things that I've seen is that, you know, when President Obama, you know, has a meeting at the White House and he brings this just happened, very young kids in grammar school. I'm talking 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old. And a young boy says to him, Mr. President, are you ever going to have a kid advisor on science? And the president then appoints him 4 months later to become this kid is young. I mean, he's a young boy. But what did that do? It sent a message to young people in America that the president is actually listening to us. Of course, this 10-year-old, 12-year-old may not have the kind of idea that's going to revolutionize the world. Maybe he will, I don't know. But it's the idea that you're bringing that bridge and you're opening it. So I'd say, I don't think it's containing ideas. I think it's having enough confidence to understand how to use the resources that you have. You have some exceptionally bright young people who are here who
I am
have...
not.
Yes, we all are very, yes. But to say to them what is the way and the shape in which we can use their innovation.
Thank you. Amira, you've been traveling between the United States, Dubai, running the associations of Colombian universities. I'm sure you have an international background. The youth of United Arab Emirates, they are with the same level of the NDA in America?
Well, you know,
Mike.
I think that every country is unique to its own, so I'd rather not compare, but share with you an experience through WIACOM's program. So in 2014, having lived in the United States, I worked on Wall Street, I worked at the UN, and I was there for a while in New York. And I noticed that there weren't any Emiratis at the UN, as in employees of the UN. They were, through the mission of the UAE and so on and so forth. So I always wondered why that was the case. And I heard from different parties that Emiratis, weren't too keen on joining the UN because of the pay scale. And then I heard some other things. But, what I want to say is that stereotypes, don't work today. Things have changed very much. As Sheikh Diab was saying earlier, when he visited his school, he saw a vast change from when he was there back in the day. And this is what I saw through WIACOM. So what I did in 2014, I said, the United Nations has a program called the Young Professionals Program. People from around the world can apply to it, and there is an examination. So there's no preference given to any nationality. Everybody writes the same exam. So people told me that that was impossible, that in the history of the UAE, no Emirati had applied and all of that. So that obviously, that challenge made me want to go and, get Emiratis to apply. So as it is not a government program, I had to rely on myself. And again, going back to what Farah was asked earlier, you have to have coordinated actions between private citizens, organizations, and government to have impact. And so I went emirate by emirate, and I created awareness programs for this UN program. And through social media, through friends of mine, everybody in the community who reposted, who gave me spaces from their Emirati coffee shops in the different emirates and everything, I was able to train these Emiratis. And would you believe it that, the very first year, a girl from Fujairah applied to the radio production job family and got through to the 3rd stage. Now, that was a first time for the UAE. So you can see that in 2014. 2015, we doubled the numbers. And 2016, we're almost tripled the numbers. So that shows you that the Emirati youth are capable, that when they're given the opportunity and awareness is there regarding certain programs, that they're very much willing and up to, the standards to actually take such tests and participate in such international programs. So does that...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sheikh. Questions. I'm asking you an honest questions, and I would like to have a honest answer. Okay. If you want to talk from the government point of view, from your personal point of view, how we could, as a government, empower the youth. I'm sure you have relationships. Do you think?
One thing, in my opinion, I think that it's very important to make the youth aware of how important it is to set a goal. I think setting a goal gives them a sense of direction, takes them further, takes them higher. It has to be a goal they're passionate about, something they really want. And every one of them has that, but just they need to find it. Because with every goal comes priorities and commitment. You have to be passionate about that to be able to say no. There's a lot of things you want to do, but there are things you have to do. And there's a lot of things you have to give up as well. If you're passionate about that goal, then you'll be able to give other things up easily. You'll be able to say no. Commitment is not a one-day thing. It could be years, and it could be a lifetime. It's a continuous effort. From our experiences, when I set a goal, I shared it with my family and friends because that added the pressure on me to stay focused on the goal and work on the goal. I couldn't let my family down. I couldn't let my country down. I couldn't let myself down, or even the team down. It's a continuous effort. In our case, it was training. In a student's case, it could be studying, working, whatever it is. You've got to do something that average person hasn't done. You've got to stand out. You've got to push the extra mile.
Sheikh, if we empower them and we give them all what they want, can they do an impact changing in the life here?
Definitely. As long as they set a goal, they have priorities, they're committed to it, they can do whatever they want to achieve.
Sheikh, to use your influence sometime?
I try my best.
Not to use?
A bit of both.
Farah, I was asking him how we can empower the youth. I would like to ask you questions. Again, I'm asking you questions due to that you have a politician background. What the government can do and does for the youth, beside listening to them, beside empowering them, what else the government can do for the youth?
Well, so, look, one is to say that youth is important, and I said that in terms of my speech today. One is reinforcing that idea that their ideas matter, to what you were just saying, that to follow their passion, to give them role models, to do all the kinds of things that you as a parent, some of you will have done automatically, but there's something that comes from your own ethos within a country, to know that your government believes in you, that they are taking time to talk about you and embed you in certain things that they're doing. So you don't have to only just listen, it's the way in which you're setting the environment up. The other is to really, this piece about sort of experimentation hasn't been talked about today, and I really want to stress that because I think that's one of the things that has made it so powerful in the United States. You have to fail. Everything is not always perfect. You don't just have an idea and it's terrific and it happens. You fail, and in failure comes a lot of recognition. And so what government can be doing is to not say, everything is excellent, we're all great, but to say, this is what we're learning from this. If you're setting yourself up so that you are an environment that promotes good ideas, that offers a chance to fail, to experiment, to do whatever, and then third, to set up role models in a wide range of ways. You're doing a whole lot. One of the things that I think you really have an extraordinary opportunity to do here in the Emirates, as I think about things, is really be innovative around. I talked about the president's the YALI, which is the Young African Leaders Initiative, and I talked to you about how they set up small grants that could be seed money for good ideas. That's something that the government can promote. So it's not just listening, it's creating a pool of funds that could allow a great idea like this one to even get some small seed funding to be able to go. What happens if you have a collaboration between government and private sector companies here that is a fund for youth that says, here's an inspirational hub that can be used. I didn't talk about during my talk today some of the collaborations that we as the State Department did with Samsung and Nokia and Microsoft and Google that set up opportunities for these companies to do things for the initiatives that we were building. What happens if here in the Emirates you have companies that say, I'm going to pour money into, it doesn't have to be, billions, it can be small money, but it's seed money for that young person who says, I'm going to take a chance on this particular idea and I want to see how that goes. Or you set up mentorship programs in which a young person says, I have an idea, and you match them up. So it's not just only listening, it's setting up the infrastructure in which great ideas can thrive.
Farah, I will ask you questions. I will come back to you about the challenges of the youth. During your served period with the government, who was the best listeners? George Bush or Barack Obama?
So it's very hard to answer that question because I had
You
an
have a right to
extraordinary.
answer
No,
or
I'm
not.
not being
No one
polite,
from
and
United States.
I'm not being diplomatic. I'll honestly tell you. I mean, it's a great service. All of you know the greatest service you can have is to serve a country that you believe in. So that's first and foremost. I will tell you that both presidents, and I also served for his father, actually, right out of college. So
right.
I've served 3 presidents. At every turn in my professional career in government, no one ever said to me that my ideas didn't matter. Both in the Bush administration, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, they gave me platforms from which I could take some crazy ideas and move them forward. And I really have to tell you, it's not one was better than the other. Somebody listened to me and they didn't. One of the things that was profoundly, I'll answer it differently, that was very profound for me right after 9/11. I was in the private sector in 9/11 when 9/11 happened, and when this attack happened to our country, and I learned about this crazy organization called Al Qaeda that was trying to define my religion and was trying to define my country, that was my call to public service, and I went to my boss in my company. I was vice president of international business for a company, and I said, Steve, I'm making a lot of money in this company. My family is here in Massachusetts. I love it here. But my country was attacked by an organization that is claiming my religion and is claiming my country, and they're a vile organization. They don't represent either one. I need to serve. So I went to government. I went into government. He helped me come into government. One of the things that I think about is that I remember saying to my boss very early on in the Bush administration when I first began, I had an experience where I went into the library at the White House. It was during Eid, actually. It was during no, it wasn't Eid. It was an iftar, and we were waiting before we went for the meal. And I was in the library at the White House, and I was looking at the walls, and there was it's very old books, so there were a lot of really old Bibles, and there were a lot of old Gitas, and there were a lot of old Torahs, and I was looking around for the Quran, and I was like, there are no Qurans here. So the next morning, I went to my boss, and I said, I'm just curious, I've only been in the White House for a couple of weeks, I just was wondering. And he said, well, find out if you just didn't see it, or find out what the situation is. So I went to the historian at the National Security Council, and I said, this is what my experience was, I didn't see a Quran, can you tell me? And she said, well, they did some research. Well, Jefferson had a private Quran in his personal library, but you know what, Farah? There are no Qurans in the White House library. And I said, oh my God. So I went to my boss and I said, this is what I found out. He said, so write the president. And so I wrote a memo to President Bush, and I told him, I said, in the history of the United States, there is no Quran in the White House library. And you know what he did?
Good. Excellent. The challenges that the youth, they might facing, or they are facing challenges, I'm sure.
So, since I've been working in the field of youth development within the UAE, I'm going to focus my answer on that. And, I'd like to go back to a point the question you asked, Farah, earlier about, what can governments do? Again, I'd like to stress the importance of coordinated actions between private organizations, between the government, and between, industry, so that everybody can together create that impact. I believe in the UAE, to be very honest, and I'm not saying this because I'm patriotic, but we really do, in comparison to many other countries, maybe due to the population, or I'd like to think it's because of our leadership, that we don't really have those kind of challenges. If you want to think about it, you're talking about artificial intelligence, right? And you're talking about science and all these advancements. Well, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid created the Accelerators program. He got government entities there. He got youth with ideas to promote products that will be futuristic. You have the Khalifa Fund for Enterprise Development that gives interest-free loans to Emiratis. Again, I decided to fund my own initiative. Had I reached out, I would have gotten support and funding. For instance, there are all these different avenues where youth can be empowered. And back to Farah's point about role models, every Emirati youth that tries to even achieve something is made a star. And that shows the others that, you know what, here we go. This is what this young man or young woman did, and you can do similar. And if you do that, we will encourage you and we will support you. And I'd like to share with you one last thing. I invite you all after the session to view our Wiyakum stand outside. If you'll see, there is a big wall on there, and we have the Emirati Stars program. And if you look at that, you will see that each one of those individuals there, from Umran Sharaf that leads the Mars mission, now that's a big thing, from Adib al-Balushi, that was a 10-year-old inventor who's sitting right there, and his sister Dana, who followed in his footsteps as well. Stand up, guys. Let's give them a round of applause. I mean, again, maybe today, thank you. Maybe today they haven't achieved as such, but they're well on their way. And with the guidance and support tomorrow, they will be big inventors and do something good for humanity, right? So it's important to also shed the light on others in the society, and together, hand in hand, with our government, with the community, progress.
So there's no challenges, and
Of course.
No excuse.
No, there's no excuse. Everybody faces challenges. I face challenges. You face challenges. Sheikh Diab faces challenges. Everybody equally in the society faces challenges. But when you have such a supportive leadership and a supportive environment and an enabling environment, then you don't have an excuse. As Sheikh Diab said, it's up to you, you're right, to persist and follow through.
I'm running out of time. I need a second message to the youth in one sentence.
I gave it all I had, and I got what I wanted. So whatever it is you choose to do in life, it might not be climbing mountains. Set a goal you're passionate about. Stay focused, no matter the challenges. Believe in yourself, and believe in your abilities. Give it all you have so you can get what you want.
Thank you.
I agree with everything, but I would say too, your only limit is your imagination.
I think take your time to decide what you want to do, but once you do decide, then power through and ignore all the noise and persist. And I'd like to end with one thing, if I may. حفظ الله دولة الإمارات أرضاً وحكاماً وشعباً ودام عزها وزايد على نهجك سائرون وياكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, the message from my end to the youth of United Arab Emirates. Guys, you are lucky to be in the United Arab Emirates. Please, welcome me. Thank you.